Okay, hello and welcome to the Safety Goals podcast in a rather impromptu episode. We are filming this today on Tuesday, July 25th of 2023, but you guys will hear this and be released a day later on Wednesday. Um, we really want to get into something that, especially today, has been a huge topic, which is sudden cardiac arrest. And obviously, in the past year, we've had other incidences in sports where sudden cardiac arrest has come to the forefront. So I want to give just our listeners a quick background on what sudden cardiac arrest is defined as and go on from there. So, sudden cardiac arrest is the result of structural or electrical disorders in the heart, which can lead to a potentially lethal arrhythmia. Oftentimes, the sign of this is someone collapsing during potential exercises, but properly trained staff and an AED on site can drastically reduce the tragic outcomes when sudden cardiac arrest does occur. So, early defibrillation dramatically will improve survival rates as well. Survival rates such as 89% have been achieved in student athletes when defibrillation has been performed within 3 minutes of their collapse. These are all important facts, but it's just the start. These facts were released in a medical study in 2013. Damar Hamlin of the Buffalo Bills suffered sudden cardiac arrest on January 2nd of 2023. That is a decade after, which goes to show that this was still a topic long before this incident with Damar occurred. However, having 23.8 million viewers on Monday Night Football watching it happen live really did release the floodgates to it to be a topic on a national level. And unfortunately, today, just 7 months later, the world was rocked once again that Bronny James, also known as LeBron James Jr., was the victim of sudden cardiac arrest earlier this morning at a USC basketball practice ahead of his freshman year. Bronny did collapse and was rushed to a nearby hospital, and it has since come out that James is out of intensive care and is listed in stable condition, that his parents have shared a statement to the media. And this is yet again just another tragic event for such a possibly young future career in the sport of basketball and just in general being a notable icon to young athletes everywhere. So, Charlie, I just want to get your take on one, the event that happened today, but also sudden cardiac arrest as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, I think number one, it's a tragedy. I mean, any time a child at any age, or a young adult um, suffers any kind of serious injury or potential catastrophic event like this, no parent should ever have to go through that. It's an absolute tragedy, and it's something that if you have children, I mean, it's what keeps you up at night is their safety. Making sure that they have the resources that they are going to live their lives in a meaningful, productive, and happy, way for the rest of their life. And this particular incident, is not unlike any other. Just because LeBron James is the prominent athlete and public figure that he is, that makes this story all that more impactful, or at least recognized. An Apple News alert went out this morning, and that's how I found out about it. Um, but tomorrow, and quite possibly, certainly going into next week, with the start of football season across the country, there are going to be a handful of other children in this country who will suffer from sudden cardiac arrest, and we will not hear about it. There are the great news in this situation is that USC and their facility and their athletic trainers had an AED on site. They had an emergency action plan, an EAP, as a way to be able to respond in these incidents. And I think that what we'd like to do is use this opportunity while the world is paused again, unfortunately, thinking about sudden cardiac arrest, is to remind folks, like you've done, Justin, of what do we need to do to make sure that all of our children have the same level of care as LeBron James's children do. Is that possible? And that's an interesting discussion, I think, for a lot of folks to start to think about. Where do I send my resources if I want to donate or if I want to support sudden cardiac arrest prevention? Where do we do that? And I think this is a great time to remind folks that, to your point again, sudden cardiac arrest is not new. It has been the number one killer of youth athletes in our country for years now. And there are many organizations and groups of organizations, coalitions that are in existence today that are fighting this type of very event. One of our partners here at Injure Free is Simon's Heart, which is a national platform that was created in response to a child who died from sudden cardiac arrest. And they are a national education platform. Here in San Diego, in California, we have another group called EP Save a Life, which is named after Eric Paredes, who was a student here in San Diego, who also passed away from sudden cardiac arrest years ago. His parents started the foundation, and they now provide free screenings as a preventative measure for students here in this area. And so there's lots of organizations around the country that are focused on prevention, focused on ensuring that this injury or this incident that occurs in sports is reduced as much as possible. But what's happening now with Damar Hamlin and now today with Bronny, I think what we're seeing there's a lot of more media attention on this subject. It's being pushed into the forefront along with all sports safety topics. So it's great to remind everybody right now about what they can do to take those steps to protect your own child. If you're a coach or you work at an organization with teams, how do I prevent and prepare for these types of incidents? Hopefully you never have to use an AED, but it's there if you need it. And then if you're looking to support others in their mission, where can donations or funding be supporting other community types of events that are out there as well? So I think this is a great opportunity for everybody to start thinking about and looking for those resources.
Yeah, I mean, there are a ton of resources out there, not just in California, but all across the country, and even in parts of, Europe and other places in the world, there are
Yeah,
these programs that are set to make this more of a notable understanding that it's not just a rare once in a while thing. Because while it is appearing to be this rare occasion, just because it's put into our eyes so few and far between with these major athletes, it's not the case. You made that very clear that there's going to be another kid in the next 48 hours that unfortunately does pass away from sudden cardiac arrest that will never hear their name due to the fact that, yeah, their parent isn't a top tier athlete that might go down as one of the greatest in their sport. But talking about sports is that, with what happened for Damar Hamlin, you see that at the ESPYs, his training staff got the Walter Payton Awards. So they basically were able to kind of get their recognition, but that all other NFL teams are going to have their athletic training staff now know how to treat sudden cardiac arrest to the fullest extent. And what you see here is that it's not just a football injury. It's not more common in football players. It can happen to anyone at any time in any sport. And it doesn't
mhm.
even have to happen to an athlete in a sport. It can happen to you while you're walking down the street getting groceries. But what I think is going to be very readily apparent after this scenario with Bronny at USC is that we're going to see every single major sport have an emergency action plan for sudden cardiac arrest because it has been proven that it is not just a one sport issue. It is not just a one type of athlete issue. It is something that can happen to anyone, anywhere, at any time, and you have to be prepared. So anyone that's on the field, hopefully, will have that knowledge. And frankly, if you are just a normal citizen, learning something as simple as CPR can save a life. It can be the difference between someone getting to wake up and see their family tomorrow and utter tragedy. So we really do advise that everyone tries to get as informed about how to help prevent and take care and manage any sudden cardiac arrest injuries that could appear in your life. But truly, that this is not something that is new, that it is a very important topic,
Yeah.
and it's only going to grow from here on out.
You make a great point too, Justin, that what is the responsibility that we have as a community or as a parent or as a coach, a volunteer, understanding some of the simple life-saving techniques, even if we don't have AEDs on every field in the country yet. But knowing how to do CPR and refreshing that certification is super helpful. I think it's extremely easy these days compared to when I was a lifeguard in high school. It's completely different process now so that anybody can do it. I hopped online real quick just to pull some statistics and talk about the prevalence. And they say in children, the out of hospital sudden cardiac arrest or cardiac arrest happens 87% of the time. So most of the time it's in somebody's home. Public places are 12%. But based off of that, the kind of the sudden cardiac arrest foundation statistics, what we're seeing here is that there's over 7,000 cases in 2015. I mean, that's just in children. Over
Yeah.
347,000, across. And this was the 2015 was the last time I did these statistics. So, this is something that affects everybody in all walks of life, not just adults, not just athletes, but also any layperson like you're describing. And it is important to remember that children fall into that demographic, and that's the responsibility that I think that we have as adults. And certainly that's our focus here. What I have here from a sports-related sudden cardiac arrest accounted for 39% of that 7,000 number in the ages of kids that are less than 18 years of old. So I mean that's a pretty significant number when we talk about the number of children every single day. What I've got here is, let's see, so based off of that number, rough numbers, 40% of 7,000, looking at about 3,000 kids every year that suffer from sudden cardiac arrest playing sports. So it's definitely something that we continue to talk about and push. One of the folks that we hold near and dear to our heart, Cindy Chang, who's been a guest on the podcast, has been working on sudden cardiac arrest. She led an initiative in Oakland Public School District to get AEDs in every single school, which they now have. But it takes that type of initiative in our local communities, and we can break up the country in these types of incidents by each taking a responsibility and looking at, even if it's in your own home, at least one person in your home should know how to perform CPR, because it could be your child. But then even more so, if you take more of a public position, you're a volunteer on a sports team, you coach a kids team, whatever it is, at schools, wherever you may be, certainly then the importance steps up to understand how to perform CPR and what that means in a life-saving incident.
And on
So,
top of that, Charlie, is that realistically, if you do suffer sudden cardiac arrest, some people may think of it as so black and white that you either will be resuscitated and everything will be fine, or you die. And that is not the case. There is a
right.
humongous spectrum of what can happen in however long that an individual is unconscious after suffering from sudden cardiac arrest. So truly, one thing that I know that I want to just put out here on the podcast is that I hope that Bronny James is going to be able to make a full and speedy recovery, but the key word there is full. Not
Mhm.
always is an athlete able to regain full mobility, full mental capacity and structures after these events, because you are depriving the brain of oxygen, and that truly is
Right.
everything that we have is made up in our brain. And you know the amount of time that it takes to get someone the attention that they need in the matter of seconds could be the difference between them being able to talk to you, the life or death. So it is an important topic. I think one thing that is definitely interesting that it feels like it hits a little bit more closer to home for me than even the Damar Hamlin scenario, just seeing how young of an athlete, someone that is younger than me that I followed him for the fact that I live in Los Angeles. I know what happens with the Lakers a lot.
Right.
And ultimately just seeing it from someone that you maybe even followed and watch, it's going to hit a little bit different. But still just remember the importance for everyone listening is that cardiac arrest has the same amount of importance regardless of the individual, regardless of the sport, or the time that it occurs. So I think
Yeah,
that
and look
that
for
is
those
the really important
resources,
thing.
right? Yeah, I mean, as much prevention as we can possibly get into it. It is preventable. It is something that can be understood. There are plenty of athletes that play with heart conditions because they understand what it is. It's the heart conditions that we don't know exist. So this is something for your annual physicals. This is something that needs to be incorporated into our screening process for athletes, but certainly all children as they develop as well. So yeah, I appreciate that, Justin. I mean, I think that it always these types of event hit different for different people depending on how closely we are affected. And that may be why when these events happen to celebrities, it hits home a little bit deeper because we are connected to them in some way. It'll be interesting to see the outcome. It'll be interesting to see once we understand where Ronnie's recovery is, and hopefully it's, like you said, a full recovery. Really interested to see how someone like LeBron James takes action on something like this, because sports meant so much to him in his life, and now he's unfortunately being impacted by some of these incidents that do occur.
Yeah.
So lots of time that will tell, I suppose, right? And see where we end up. But at this point, right now, to your point, great news is that he's out of intensive care. Looks like he's on the road to recovery, and that's a phenomenal outcome. That's what we hope for in these types of situations.
Exactly right. So, once again, I would like to thank everyone for listening to this rather impromptu but extremely important episode of the Safety Goals podcast. You can find all our other episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or YouTube, or whatever podcast platform you listen to. If you like what you heard here, I'm sure you're going to like more of what you have to listen to on that end. So, again, have a great rest of your day, and thank you so much for tuning in.